The second GOP debate took place just last night, and I will now give you a rundown of my opinion and who I think came out looking the best. So now, first and foremost, when it comes to Rand Paul, I think that as a left-wing political viewer, I agreed most with him. Now, it's a shame that he's only polling at about 1% currently, because his views on foreign policy are actually reasonable. Now, when it comes to the flat tax, he's completely wrong, and that's very misleading, because what it is, in actuality, is a giveaway to the rich. So I don't like that idea, but when he talks about foreign policy and how the Iraq war was a blunder, and how we should not invade Syria, how we should not overthrow Bashar al-Assad, well, I think that he's 100% right. Now, when it comes to Mike Huckabee, I think he was a non-entity. He espoused more theocratic rhetoric, to no one's surprise, and I don't really think that's going to do very much to galvanize the Republican base. Sure, your theocratic evangelical Christian supporters are going to love everything that you say. Your support for Kim Davis and how she's a hero, they're inspired by that, buddy, but that's only a fraction of the electorate, the Republican electorate, that is, so you're going to have to try harder. When it comes to Ted Cruz, also a non-entity. Can't stand the guy. He's completely smarmy. Everything that he says, he has that pretentious shit-eating look on his face, to where he's just trying so hard to be a politician, but it just doesn't sit well with me. He didn't come off well, and I think that in the debate, much like Mike Huckabee, he was also a non-entity. Now, when it comes to Marco Rubio, he did demonstrate some foreign policy knowledge, but the fact of the matter is that he just has bad ideas. So I think he's probably going to be somewhere in the middle as to winners and losers. He didn't necessarily win, but he certainly didn't lose. When it comes to Donald Trump, very interesting. He actually seemed more apathetic this time in comparison with the first debate, but he still managed to shut down Jeb Bush, because when Donald Trump said, "Excuse me," to Jeb Bush, he paused for a second, and he had to work up the courage to say no. And that was a good moment for Jeb Bush's fans, until Donald Trump shit on him and was like, "Oh, I see you've brought more energy this time. I like it." Ugh, that did not look good for Jeb Bush in the end. So I think that Donald Trump really has a way of getting to Jeb Bush, and I really like watching that. However, I don't think that Donald Trump won this debate, nor do I think he came out looking good at all, especially when it got to the anti-vax part. His lack of knowledge on foreign policy is also an issue, and in these two areas, I don't think he came out good at all. I think it may actually be detrimental to his numbers. We might see a small decrease, which is my prediction. Now, I haven't seen the polling results yet. I'm probably entirely wrong, because I cannot predict what the Republican primary base is going to do. No idea. But when it comes to anti-vaxxers, that's a very fringy portion of the electorate that you are trying to pander to. Now, when he talks about how he's going to have such great people to advise him to make up for his lack of knowledge when it comes to foreign policy, I don't think that he came out well, and he actually admitted that, yeah, I'll be learning these things if I'm president. Ugh, that did not make him look good. Now, when it comes to Jeb Bush, certainly I think it's the case that he did up the ante when it comes to energy this time, but I don't think he's saying anything that will necessarily excite voters. He tried to say that lobbyists aren't going to influence his campaign, but if you look at how much money he's raised, now over $110 million, you can see that out of all of those candidates, all 11 on stage, we know that he will probably be the most corrupt and listen the most to what lobbyists and defense contractors have to say. And you can hear that in his rhetoric, because he wants war. So it's absolutely absurd for him to try to purport the claim that he's not going to listen to lobbyists, because he is the typical corrupt politician. There was a portion where Donald Trump was kind of throwing George Bush under the bus, and it was great. But Jeb Bush said, "Well, say what you will about my brother, but he kept us safe." That was the facepalm moment of the night. Now, I don't know if you guys recall this event called 9/11, but that actually happened under the watch of George W. Bush. Other events, such as the anthrax scare and whatnot, such as destabilization of Iraq and chaos in the Middle East, this all perpetuated more Islamic extremism, and as a result, has made states within the region unsafe, has made the U.S. more unsafe. So that is the most ridiculous claim of the night. I'm calling it. So Scott Walker, he really didn't do anything to stand out. His "I'm a governor in a blue state" speech, well, the thunder from that was stolen by Chris Christie, who also is a governor in a blue state. And I think Chris Christie did a better job of telling the story how he's fought with a liberal legislator to pass things through. So I don't think Scott Walker really did much. I think he's also kind of middle of the road. He didn't necessarily lose, but he didn't do anything to up his position in the race. When it comes to John Kasich, he is certainly one of the most reasonable candidates. I thought that what he said for a Republican wasn't too scary, but then we got to the portion where he said he wanted to defund Planned Parenthood. You can't do that. You've got to understand. You've got to look at the facts. Only 3% of what Planned Parenthood does is tailored to abortion. Everything else is women's health. So when you say you want to defund Planned Parenthood, you're not making yourself look like a moderate. You're actually hurting yourself. Now, I did like, however, when he talked about how he wouldn't necessarily just shred the Iran deal like Ted Cruz said he would do when he gets in office. He said that he would actually try to work with our European allies. And Rand Paul said the same thing, that he would see if they will be compliant with the deal, which is reasonable, even if you disagree with it, which you shouldn't, because it stops Iran from getting a nuke. But if you at least say, look, let's see what happens, I think that's way more reasonable. Now, Chris Christie seemed more relaxed and less constipated this time. He did get destroyed by Rand Paul once again, this time on medical marijuana. In the last debate, Rand Paul crushed him when it came to NSA spying, and all that Chris Christie did was appeal to emotions. Didn't do very much to further his point. And this time, Rand Paul came with the facts and kind of threw the fact in Chris Christie's face that, look, you want to enforce the federal law when it comes to marijuana, guess what's going to happen? You're going to put parents in jail who need to have medical marijuana for their children who have 500 seizures a day. And Chris Christie did not come out looking good when it comes to that. And the libertarian wing of the Republican primary base is not going to be happy with Chris Christie. So I don't think he did very well. When it comes to Ben Carson, he had the opportunity to really show up Donald Trump on vaccines, but he didn't. We had 2 doctors out of all 11 candidates, 2 medical doctors. None of them really wanted to challenge Donald Trump when it came to vaccines, which you could have easily one-upped him right there. I don't know why he didn't do that. Now, of course, in typical Ben Carson fashion, he just looked completely lethargic, like he was about to go to sleep. And maybe I think he's just polling well because he's an outsider, because he's not saying anything in particular that's interesting that I think would galvanize the Republican base. Now, when it comes to Carly Fiorina, in my opinion, she is the winner. She came out looking very, very strong. She was charismatic. She acted presidential. She was decisive. She had a specific plan when it comes to the military. And I think that Republican voters are going to like that because she demonstrated knowledge. She knows about the geopolitics in the Middle East, East Asia, Europe. And I think that she looked the best. Now, when you actually listen to the substance of what she's saying, well, her rhetoric is terrifying because, in essence, she wants World War III, or at least to initiate the Cold War again with Russia. Because when you talk about putting troops on the border of Russia and Baltic states, that's not something that's going to be conducive to international peace and stability. But overall, I think that she had a specific plan, she demonstrated strength, and she really looked the strongest out of all the candidates. I think she's going to come out looking great. But again, I don't know. It's so difficult to get into the minds of Republican primary voters. So we'll see if what she said actually resonated with them, because I think she looks the best. So overall, the takeaway is that it's the same Republican themes from most of the candidates, maybe not Rand Paul. They want you to be very, very afraid. They want you to know that what's happening in the world is terrifying. America is now weak. Our military is shit, even though we have the largest military in the world. They want voters to be completely afraid. They want voters to think that Obama has done a terrible job, even though he shrunk the deficit by 2/3, and we've had over 50 months of consecutive job growth in the private sector thanks to the policies of Barack Obama. Yet, they want you to think that Obama has made this country a lot less safe. They want to fearmonger and appeal to that frightened little Republican who's sitting there thinking, oh God, everybody just wants to gang up on America. Ooh. Well, guess what? What you need to do if you really want to win, not just the primary, but the national election, is say something different. Stop with the typical Republican talking points. Actually say what you can do for the American people.